What's up, guys? Welcome back to Project Potter. Welcome back to the review you've been looking for. My name is Kyle, your host, guys. We are back here for a second consecutive week with a non-mainline movie, a non-episode movie, I should say. This is our review of Solo, a Star Wars story, guys, and another excellent film, I gotta say. They really knocked it out of the park with these I say back to back because I'm watching them back to back, but with these between Rogue One and then Solo, these two interstitial stories, really just excellent films overall. So if you haven't seen the series before, guys, what I do is go through kind of my thoughts on the movie and my favorite scenes. We do a Force is Strong with this one, which is my favorite character. There Was No Try, which is the least favorite character. A score out of 10, guys, and of course we rank them. We're going through and ranking every Star Wars movie. So we got this one, guys, and then the sequel trilogy, and that's it. So excited to talk about this one, guys. If you do like the content, of course, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and let's go. Okay, guys, so this is obviously like a Han Solo origin story, and there is a lot to like about this movie. The pacing, I think, is pretty good overall. It has some moments where it definitely drags a little bit, but I think it's a very clean movie. It's a very fun movie. I honestly don't understand any of the hate behind Alden Ehrenreich as young Han Solo. Obviously he's living up to, Harrison Ford as Han Solo, and it's an iconic character. I thought he was excellent, and I don't really understand why people wouldn't like him in this movie. I thought he nailed the mannerisms. There were so many scenes and actions that he did where I was like, dude, that is Han in like New Hope or Empire or Return of the Jedi, like mostly New Hope or Empire, because those are, Han's blind for half the film and Return of the Jedi, but still a great film, guys. I got that one right now, number 2 overall. So I just thought he absolutely crushed Han Solo. Like he nailed it. Donald Glover, one of my favorite all-time actors. I think he's just amazing in every role he's in. Him as a young Lando, incredible dude. We're talking about two of the most charismatic characters in Star Wars. We got Khaleesi over here as Kira. Emilia Clarke, of course. She has an interesting role, but, we get Chewie. We get the great Woody Harrelson, too, who plays Beckett, and he's typical Woody Harrelson, but, he's there's like a certain level of acting with Woody Harrelson where you're just going to get a good product. And then, of course, we have the chick from Westworld, Thandie Newton, who plays Val, and she's not in it for much of the movie, but I think she did a really good job when she was in it there. So, yeah, obviously, guys, we get the Kessel Run, which is just incredible, dude. It's so cool. Basically, this movie revolves around 2 jobs where they go and they have the train heist in the beginning, and they're like scouting it out. Really cool. Train robberies are always cool, dude. Like little Red Dead Redemption style. Train robberies for futuristic Star Wars type trains where they're like, there's a train car on top and train car on bottom. Awesome stuff, dude. Like, what a cool concept that is. But then they're going against the Nest or whatever, that group of the group of, not bandicoots, the group of bandits is going against them. They're trying to get the coaxium. Find out at the end of the movie that they're led by the Flag Smasher girl from Falcon Winter Soldier. She's great. Train sequence goes bad because they're trying to get that one creative coaxium off the train, and Han gets in there and he's flying it, and they're like, oh, you're a pretty good pilot. And he's again, Alden's charisma and I don't want to say arrogance, but cockiness is so prevalent here. And it's like, that is Han Solo to a T, man. There's like a whole big plan where they're going to blow up the bridge and all that stuff, but Val has to move over because the Vipers, which are like the scout Empire troopers, are coming through, and so they kind of are between a rock and a hard place. And so Val has to sacrifice herself, which is sad, but they eventually get like the coaxium off the train, and then the bandits or the Nest, whatever, we're just gonna call them bandits. The cable's on there, and they're like, keep flying, like you gotta let your cable go, we're gonna crash in the mountain. And then Han is like, he lets go at the last second. The coaxium blows up. We find out it's like very explosive. That it's a really cool scene to show us like how dangerous that stuff is and how valuable it is. And so that's kind of like the big ticket thing. So Beckett tells them like, yo, this isn't just any job. This is a job for the Crimson Dawn, which are like this crime syndicate. But we find out at the end, like, report to Darth Maul, which is really interesting. And that's kind of a weird reveal, but I think a pretty cool one. This isn't just another job. He's like, they're going to come after us with like Imperial troopers and hunt us down. And they're like, okay, well, we just need to steal more coaxium. And they're like, dude, there's no way we're going to find that coaxium. And so there's like a whole plan. And they say, well, there's unrefined coaxium on this mining planet or whatever. That's where they do the Kessel Run. That's really cool because they like have a revolution basically where they break out like the Wookiees and everything kind of turns to chaos. They get the coaxium, and then they find out if you don't refine it by a certain time, like they have a certain amount of time, it's going to blow up. And so there's like this cool like liquid in there that's going through. They steal the coaxium. There's a whole big thing, and they take down. There's like I don't know if it's the Pikes, but they're shooting after everyone. We get some cool shots of HAAN and Lando shooting, and there's like some iconic shots. Really, really awesome stuff. They get the coaxium, and then they have to leave, and they're like, we just don't have enough time to get back. Like, these are going to blow up. It took them like too long to get it. And so they're like, okay, well, we have to go out through the mall. I think they call it the mall or the Maelstrom. And then there's a Star Destroyer that shows up, and it's so cool visually, dude. And they're like, oh, don't worry, they're not going to throw like a single TIE fighter at a freighter. And like, they're not going to waste a TIE fighter. And they send like 4 or 5 or 6 TIE fighters, and like, okay. So they're like, dude, we don't have time. This is going to blow. And then HAAN is like, what if we go through the Kessel Run? Or like, he's like, what if we like cut through, there's like a cyclone or whatever. And he's like, what if we cut through it? And then they're like, into the Maelstrom, dude. He's like, that's suicide. He's like, that's a really creative way to blow us up. And then, of course, they go through there, and they're like navigating the field, and just like really, really cool visual effects. It's like basically like a huge like thunderstorm, but in space. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, guys, but I mean, if you guys have seen the movie, really cool. And then they need a boost at the end. They reach the like gravitational pull. There's this giant creature, which is like the Maw or whatever, and then they use the escape pod to get that sucked into the gravity hole. And then they need the coaxium. They like take a little bit of coaxium, and then they like spark it into the engine, so it kills the engine initially. And there's a great scene where Lando is like, oh, like about to go, and then they just fall back in the gravity hole, and he's like, oh, and then the engine kicks in, and they fly through, and then there's like this small little opening, and then he's like, hey, Kira, remember in the beginning of the movie when I took the little car thing and got stuck there? She's like, yeah, it didn't work. He's like, this one will. And he turns the Falcon and busts through it and jumps to hyperspeed, and he's like, punch it. It's so awesome, dude. The Kessel Run really was like aesthetically incredibly like lived up to the hype for sure. And then there's just the whole back and forth. We get Vision as the crime boss, guys. Paul Bettany, he's so good. It's so crazy that Paul Bettany is such a great actor that he can play a great hero, and he plays a really like chilling villain where like I was captivated by him. Like I was afraid of him every time he came on screen, and he always felt like he had the upper hand, and he always felt like he was kind of crazy and willing to do whatever. So that was really cool. And then we get like this kind of reveal at the end where Kira is working for the Crimson Dawn, and she's like, you don't know what I've done. Han hits on her like the whole movie, and then he's like so into her, and she's like kind of pushing him away. She's like, dude, you don't know what I've done. Like, you don't really know me. And I love this back and forth between Becker. I love this back and forth between Beckett, who's trying to say like, hey man, maybe you don't know this girl as well as you know her. And he's like, oh, believe me, I know her pretty well. And then it turns out at the end of the movie that Beckett's working for the Crimson Dawn, and so is Kira. And it's like, oh, dude, Beckett actually knew her better, and Han, he got caught up like as a kind of a love affair, but he didn't really know the girl. And so there's a big reveal. She kills Paul Bettany's character at the end, and then she channels it she channels Darth Maul, which is a big reveal, and he's like, Kira, you're going to be working with me. So it's like, oh shit, Kira's kind of a bad guy, and Emilia Clarke is so charming, so we didn't really see that coming, but something was a little off, like the whole movie, really. Obviously, guys, we get a great scene to the origin of Chewie and Han, and he like goes in the cage, and it's this great muddy scene where they like he fakes beating him up, and that's where we find out Han speaks a little Wookiee, which is how he understands Chewie in all the movies, which is cool connecting piece there. But their chemistry is great, how they're literally chained up together. And then he's like, we'll go this way. And again, Alden's, and then the engine kicks in, and they fly through, and then there's like this small little opening, and then he's like, hey, Kira, remember in the beginning of the movie when I took the little car thing and got stuck there? She's like, yeah, it didn't work. He's like, this one will. And he turns the Falcon and busts through it and jumps to hyperspeed, and he's like, punch it. It's so awesome, dude. The Kessel Run really was like aesthetically incredibly like lived up to the hype for sure. And then there's just the whole back and forth. We get Vision as the crime boss, guys. Paul Bettany, he's so good. it's so crazy that Paul Bettany is such a great actor that he can play a great hero, and he plays a really like chilling villain where like I was captivated by him. Like I was afraid of him every time he came on screen, and he always felt like he had the upper hand, and he always felt like he was kind of crazy and willing to do whatever. So that was really cool. And then we get like this kind of reveal at the end where Kira is working for the Crimson Dawn, and she's like, you don't know what I've done. Han hits on her like the whole movie, and then he's like so into her, and she's like kind of pushing him away. She's like, dude, you don't know what I've done. Like, you don't really know me. And I love this back and forth between Becker. I love this back and forth between Beckett, who's trying to say like, hey man, maybe you don't know this girl as well as you know her, and he's like, oh, believe me, I know her pretty well. And then it turns out at the end of the movie that Beckett's working for the Crimson Dawn, and so is Kira. And it's like, oh, dude, Beckett actually knew her better. And Han, you know, he got caught up like as a kind of a love affair, but he didn't really know the girl. And so there's a big reveal. She kills Paul Bettany's character at the end, and then she channels it like. She channels Darth Maul, which is a big reveal, and he's like, Kira, you're going to be working with me. So it's like, oh, shit, Kira's kind of a bad guy, and Emilia Clarke is so charming, so we didn't really see that coming, but something was a little off, like the whole movie, really. Obviously, guys, we get a great scene, too, the origin of Chewie and Han, and he's like goes in the cage, and it's this great muddy scene where they like he fakes beating him up, and that's where we find out Han speaks a little Wookiee, which is how he understands Chewie in all the movies, which is cool connecting piece there. But their chemistry is great, how they're literally chained up together, and he's like, we'll go this way. And again, all his quips with Chewie and with everyone really was so good and so Han-esque, and I just thought he did an excellent job, and I thought the cast was great. I thought the action was really awesome, and I just thought it was a really well-written story, and I really cared about it from start to finish, and those are kind of my thoughts. Okay, guys, the Force was strong with this one, which is my favorite character. It's Alden Ehrenreich, dude. It's Han Solo. I thought he just absolutely killed this role. I mean, he was so good. But like I said, guys, there were so many like mannerisms and lines and just the way he delivered everything that like I was like, that's Han, dude. That is Han from like I said, New Hope, Empire. Like he nailed it. He must have really studied like a lot of Harrison Ford when he's playing Han Solo, because like he just the way that young Harrison Ford talks as Han he's so, again, he's cocky, but he's not arrogant, but he's really confident, and it's like, oh, we got a great pilot already, and Paul Bettany is like, he is confident, is he? And he's like, and he's hungry. Just thought he was just from the get-go like a joy to watch on screen, and I thought he really did justice to the character, and I think he, among, again, a really strong cast, and he wasn't the most famous one on this cast between Woody Harrelson and even Donald Glover, but I think he really like made it his own, and this was the first time that probably most people, myself included, had seen him in any particular role, and for him to like really like fill those shoes to an extent, I thought was really, really great. And obviously Emilia Clarke, guys, as Khaleesi from Game of Thrones, she was huge back when this movie came out, so she still is really. But yeah, I just thought Alden really held his own, and I think he did some really, really cool things with the character that we didn't really get to see out of Han, while still staying true to that character. So it was like him with a fresh coat of paint, so much like what I said about Rogue One, guys, feeling like an original movie, but kind of having some new stuff here. So yeah, it was really great. I thought he was great with Chewie. He was great with Lando. Anytime him and Lando were on screen, dude, it was like two really talented actors and two really witty, charismatic characters going at it. And I just thought it was great. Their card rematch at the end to win the Millennium Falcon is great. And how Lando is like trying to be like, yo, this is my ship. He's like, I'm going to be in my ship over there. And he's like, I hate you. I never want to see you again. And he's like, not even ever? There's a great scene where Han's like, we got 30 armed guys in there. And he's pointing to the Falcon that's like falling apart. And he's like, I just got to make one snap. And he's like, they're coming out. And then Lando flies away immediately. And it's like, yeah, that checks out. Alden was great. And I just think he stood out the most from a phenomenal cast. All right, guys, there was no try, which is my least favorite character. Guys, Khaleesi, I love you. You're my girl. But Khaleesi, Emilia Clarke, as Kira. She's got to be my least favorite character in this one. Now, this is tough because I really, really thought the cast was exceptional, and it was really hard to pick one that I didn't like. And I'm not saying that I hated Emilia Clarke's character. I thought she was an interesting character on paper, but I just thought it was weird because the beginning of the movie, she's like really into HAAN, and they're kind of going around there, and they obviously get split up at the airport. And I didn't mention, guys, that HAAN, I guess, gets his nickname because he's like, join the Empire. And I didn't mention, guys, there's a really cool like story element where, although they kind of rushed it, where HAAN joins the Empire, he goes to war. There's like a literal war scene where that's where he meets Woody Harrelson's character, and so that was cool. But it felt really rushed. But he's like, "Oh, what's your name?" He's like, "HAAN," and he's like, "Okay, last name." And he's like, "Who's your crew? Who are your friends?" And he's like, "I don't have any friends." And he's like, "HAAN Solo," and I was like, a little cheesy, but still made me smile. So Kira was in love with HAAN, gets split up, and then they run into each other at the party with the Crimson Dawn, and she's just like, "Hey," she's like, "You look good." He was like so excited to see her, like, and that's where I thought Alden was like really good, where he was like, "Oh my God, like I'm coming for you, I was coming back for you," and she's like, "Oh, okay, like that's cool." And I'm like, I don't know, it was just I would have liked Emilia Clarke to like like I wish she played a little bit more towards like being into HAAN, where I feel like she was just there strictly in business, and it's like it was almost a little too obvious that she was working for Crimson Dawn because she was just there. First of all, she had a freaking Crimson Dawn like symbol on her wrist, and I don't know how HAAN like didn't notice that or they didn't see that. I don't know if she was wearing long sleeves the whole time, but she is just kind of like, yeah, no. He's like, "Oh, after this we can like, we can run away or whatever," and she's like, "Yeah, maybe." And I'm like, "Dude, were you in love with this guy or what happened?" And she's like, "Oh, you wouldn't want to look at me with things I've done, like you would look at me differently." But then she doesn't really get into that, or they never really follow up on that until like the very end of the movie. And I'm just like, it's weird. This is kind of more about the relationship between Kira and HAAN. And obviously, when we meet HAAN in New Hope, he's like going after Leia. So we're wondering, like, is Kira going to die? Like, what's going on? Obviously, she does not die. I just thought that her character in this movie, well, not necessarily the worst. I think it was the least impressive of the rest of the cast and crew in this one. Even Val, I'd say that was really good. Thandie Newton was really good in her short time on screen. So Emilia Clarke, I love you. Khaleesi, Mother Dragons, but you're my least favorite character for this one. Okay, guys, that brings us to the score. This is a 9-1 for me. This is a very good movie. The only reason I'm not putting this movie higher, and I wrestled with the score for quite a bit of time, I do think that the story is a little thin. I think it plays on nostalgia a lot, and I think it plays on those big moments where it's like, oh, we love seeing a young Han, right? And again, I thought Alden was really good. And we love seeing a young Lando, and, we love seeing Woody Harrelson, and there's that like whole like heist vibe, which is cool. But there's like this ragtag group. We see Chewie, obviously, a lot of connecting pieces here. But like I said, it really boils down to they have one job, they mess up that job, they have to go get another job to save their life. There's that reveal of at the end of Kira turning on Vision, or I should say, whatever Vision's character's name is, Dross or Voss or whatever it is. I'll put it in here, guys. Other than that, it's kind of like, okay. And then there's like the reveal of Beckett like working for the Crimson Dawn, but then like he's like, "Oh, come on in here," and it's just weird the way they shot it, where Woody Harrelson just kind of walks in, and he's like, "Hey, it's me." He's like, "I told you, kid, not to trust anyone," and it's like, okay, but they didn't really like lay those clues down too much, really. The action I thought was excellent. The train scene, I mean, is awesome. I mean, Val's death felt impactful because she had to get the job done, and I love how she's like, "Wouldn't have had it any other way, baby," and she like blows it up, and I thought that was really cool to kind of like, she loves this man, and so that's why she is like, "I'm doing whatever it takes," including suicide, to make sure this job gets done. And then I just thought the cast was fantastic. I mean, again, Alden as Han was amazing. Donald Glover as Lando was amazing. It's a really good movie, guys. It's just really fun from start to finish. Again, I felt like it dragged a little bit at times, but the story, although I really enjoyed it, and I love that kind of like, they mentioned the Pikes and the crime syndicates, and obviously having seen Boba Fett since then, I'm a little more interested in this stuff, and I thought it was really cool, all the name drops that I got. L3, I didn't mention, guys, was great as well. L3's death was weird because Lando Lando shows that he really cared for her, but it was like a weird kind of thing. But I think L3 was much funnier than even K2SO and Rogue One. So I thought L3 is probably the funniest droid that we've ever had, and really, really like loved all the screen time there. I just feel like the story, I thought about putting it above Empire, but Empire just has this large scale, like, this big battle against the Empire, and the reveal of obviously Vader being Luke's father at the end, and everything in Cloud City, and we get real Lando. I think a lot of the reason I like this movie a lot is because it's got literal characters and elements from Empire that I like, where it's got literally Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, just a younger version of them, and I thought the portrayal was really great. That it reminded me of like what makes the original trilogy so good. And visually a very, very like a stunning movie. I mentioned Rogue One was stunning, guys. This is right up there with that. I don't think to quite the same extent, but there are some really, really amazing shots. And the Kessel Run is so cool, dude. Like one of the coolest things with the giant monster. And then like when the ship comes back and then kicks it, that was all really good stuff. But yeah, this is just a fun film from start to finish. And I would say one of the more underrated Star Wars movies out there. Okay, guys, that brings us to the ranking. So no change at the top. We still have Rogue One at number 1. We have Return of the Jedi at number 2. We have A New Hope at number 3, guys. And then Empire Strikes Back at number 4. This one slots in at number 5, just after Empire with a 9-1. I had Empire at 9-2. Then we have Attack of the Clones, and then Revenge of the Sith, and then The Phantom Menace. So, again, I thought about putting this above Empire for a while. I thought about possibly putting it under New Hope, but New Hope is so iconic, dude. And Return of the Jedi is so good. And I just thought Rogue One was so great, and especially because it enhances A New Hope, I thought that was a perfect movie. This one, I think, is a very, very good movie. I just don't think the story is quite strong enough to really stand up with like the greats of the original trilogy or Rogue One. This does also make the original movies better. You don't really need this movie to understand that Han and Chewie are kind of best buds. It wasn't like a crazy origin story. You don't need to understand that like Han and Lando played cards and won the ship. It's really cool. It's very fun fan service, but you can watch the original trilogy and be like, okay, we get it. Those are friends. They met sometime. Han used to go running with Lando, whatever. Like it's all good. I really, really like that it adds a backstory. I think it's really fun. And when I think about the original trilogy now, I'm going to think about this movie, but I don't think it's necessarily required. Although it's great, I won't put it above really any of the original trilogy or Rogue One because I think those movies are that great. And so this one is like, there's like top tier, elite level, and this one's like 1A. This one's like right below the top of the top. So really, really good outing, but it's going to slot in at number 5 here. All right, guys, that's it. That's another episode of the review you've been looking for. This is our Star Wars in review. So, guys, all we have left is a sequel trilogy. We'll be back next week for Force Awakens, which I know a lot of people think is probably the best movie of the sequel trilogy. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, but I do really love that movie. I also love Daisy Ridley. So excited to watch that, guys, once again in 4K, a big screen, all that. So it's really been a treat watching all these movies. Not only do I love Star Wars, but watching them on a big screen with a good sound system, it really does make a difference. And it's as close to a theater experience as I'm going to get at home. So really, really appreciate you guys stopping by. Go check out the other content on the channel, of course. But if you did like the content, guys, like, comment, subscribe. You already know the deal. Until next time, guys, never tell me the odds.